Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's debate, the proposition of which is resolved: campus network security is not the library's job. I'm Susie Winter, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. I'm VP External Communications at Springer Nature, and also co-chair of the Scholarly Network Security Initiative. For those of you unfamiliar with SNSI, it's a collaborative organization which brings together large and small publishers, university presses, societies, librarians, and information network specialists to work together to raise awareness of the cyber challenges threatening our academic institutions, including the integrity of the scientific record, scholarly systems, and the safety of personal data. We have two excellent debaters with us today. Mark McBride from ITHAKA will be speaking for the proposition, and Rick Anderson of Brigham Young University will be speaking against it. So, a bit of clarity for those of you still a little bit jet-lagged like me. Mark will be arguing that network security is not the library's job, while Rick will be claiming that it is. I had to write that down to make sure I got it round the right way.
All the negatives sorted.
So just take you through some of the rules of engagement for this debate. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to indicate where you stand right now on the proposition. Mark and Rick will then speak for a maximum of 10 minutes each, and I will have my timer going, and it will ring when you have to stop speaking. This will then be followed by each giving a 3-minute rebuttal to what the other has said. And as I said, I will be very strict on time with that. Then after that, there will be a time for you in the audience to give your thoughts and discuss the topic with the debaters. And then we vote again, and whichever debater has moved the most votes to his side of the argument, I will declare the winner. So, without further ado, can I seek your views of the audience on the motion, campus network security is not the library's job? All of those in favor of the proposition, could you raise your hands? So I need to do, Rick, can you count?
Yeah, okay.
1, 2.
There's a conflict. Oh,
okay.
She doesn't have a conflict of interest.
Just
Raise your hands really high. So
really high. So it's not. So 17 do not think it is the library's job. Could we have hands up for those who think it is the library's job? Oh, 2 hands. I like it. Cheating there. Okay, so we're 17-11 in favor of the motion at the moment. Mark, we'll start with you as you are in favor of the motion.
Was that second vote was against the motion, right?
Yes, so it's 17 in favor of the motion, 11 against the motion. You're losing at the moment,
Yes.
Rick.
Yes.
Hang in there. It's a long debate.
Right. Hang on. Where's my timer? Right.
You got the timer?
And go.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. I want to express gratitude and thanks to our moderator, Susie Winters, for leading us in this wonderful dialogue, rich dialogue, on the topic of, whether libraries should or should not be involved in campus network security. I'm also very thankful to my colleague, Rick Anderson, who, chose unwisely in this debate, but, it is a good opportunity for him to take to a mic. But also I want to thank all of you for engaging us in this rich discourse, because it is an important topic, and I think it's one that's going to be impacting all of us and all of our institutions. So to begin, I'd like to delve into the topic of campus network security, and I want to articulate its various dimensions and imperatives. So campus network security encompasses a comprehensive array of practices, protocols, tools, technological solutions aimed at safeguarding the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data and resources that are intrinsic to a campus network. Of course, it's campus network security, so typically this falls under the auspice of the university or the college. I'd like to now just turn our attention to what all that encompasses, or briefly discuss some of the items this encompasses, and then I want a time for all of you to reflect if you really believe that this should be the role of the library moving forward. So I'm going to talk about network access control. So this includes authentication, which many of us are familiar with the imperative of ensuring that access is granted exclusively to verified individuals. Authorization in itself is the establishment of parameters defining the resources that a verified user can access. Accounting, the meticulous documentation of user access details, inclusive of the duration of access. That might rub against the grain of a few people in this room. Firewalls. Who doesn't like to talk about firewalls? This is the line of defense safeguarding the internal campus network from the unauthorized access and potential external threats. Intrusion detection prevention systems, a vigilant monitoring of network traffic to identify and address any suspicious activities. Mitigating potential threats. Not that a campus network has to ever worry about any outside threats attacking its network. It was a bad attempt at humor. Antivirus and anti-malware, one of my favorite topics. The essential tools in safeguarding computers and servers within the network from malicious software. So when those email attachments are clicked on, which my mother is famous for, that you should not click on, by the way, that now isn't the responsibility of the library to address. And I think our library liaisons would really value that role. Secure wireless networks, one of my favorite topics. The implementation of advanced encryption protocols such as WPA3 to secure data transmission over wireless networks, ensuring the security of a wireless access point to prevent unauthorized access. Then, of course, we have our VPNs, providing secure remote connectivity to the campus network. Not that we're not using VPNs on a more regular basis since the dawn of lockdowns have since passed. Security policies and training, formulation and stringent enforcement of security policies for the campus, conducting training sessions for students, faculty, and staff to foster secure usage of the network. I would assume that many of these trainings would be mandatory, and there's nothing better to sell to an academic campus than a mandatory training. Patch management, ensuring all software and systems within the network are consistently updated with the latest security patches. How about physical security? Safeguarding the physical components and infrastructure of the network from potential damage or theft. We all ready to begin? To effectively manage these responsibilities is paramount to possess specialized skills and capabilities. Increasingly, we're witnessing a trend where expert managed service providers are actually being enlisted by universities and colleges to manage these roles, offering a compelling solution for the institution so they don't have to do this on their own. While some libraries may have that talent inside their operations, these skills are in high demand in industry. Given the current challenges that we face in recruitment and retention of library staff, there is a tangible risk that libraries taking these responsibilities might face intensified staff challenges. The responsibilities inherent in campus network security are multifarious, encompassing enhanced network availability, improved network health, and comprehensive analytics on network performance. These elements collectively establish the benchmarks for evaluating the effectiveness of any network operations or any network operation team. Universities in navigating these intricate challenges need departments that are strategically aligned with their institutions, bringing both technical expertise and a nuanced understanding of the evolving landscape of network operations and security. So turning now over just to compliance issues. Libraries will need to acquiesce to administration overseeing certain responsibilities on behalf of their campus. One pertinent example is the new information security requirements published by the U.S. Department of Education. I don't know if people are familiar with this. This went into effect on June 9th of 2023. These are the requirements. Institutions must designate a responsible and qualified individual to oversee and implement information security programs. base their security programs on thorough risk assessments, design and enforce safeguards in line with identified risks, regularly test and monitor these safeguards for effectiveness, reevaluate and adjust security programs based on test and monitoring results, implement policies and procedures ensuring effective enactment of security programs by personnel, oversee information security providers. It is worth noting that libraries, in maintaining their existing set of responsibilities, would also need to adhere to these requirements. Institutions maintaining records for 5,000 or more students are additionally required to develop an incident response plan, and designated information security officer is required to regularly report to the Board of Trustees and the Executive Cabinet about the institution's information security programs. So I invite all of you now to just reflect on that set of responsibilities. This is the responsibilities of campus network security. Now just reflecting on the role of the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer. It is a crucial grasp of the depth of responsibilities which this individual has. The formulation, enactment, and upkeep of comprehensive security policies, standards, and guidelines. They are ultimately responsible for risk management, enactment, and upkeep of comprehensive security policies. They provide leadership in incident response, including crafting and implementing an incident response plan, advocating for security awareness and training across the expanse of the entire university community, collaborating with various university departments and external entities to weave security into the fabric of operations, managing security technologies and ensuring the security infrastructure remains up to date and robust, overseeing security audits, assessments, ensuring adherence to relevant security standards and all regulations. CISOs also bear the onus of ensuring all campus contracts that interact with any segment of the campus network align with the institution's security policies and regulations. This underscores the expansive...
30 seconds left, Mark.
Oh, no. This just talks about the expansiveness of that role. So think about it now. All libraries will be ultimately responsible for reviewing all contracts that the campus signs. So I am my argument against this notion that this role is a responsibility of the campus library. At our core is providing access to information. Of course, that's downplaying it somewhat, and also securely providing access to information. And I understand that. But nonetheless, access is our first principle.
And
I
there's the buzzer.
That's the buzzer. Now I turn it over to you, my friend.
Thank you very much, Mark.
I'm Irish, too. I usually talk much faster.
And go.
All right. Today I'm here to convince you that the proposition that network security is not the library's job is both factually incorrect and strategically wrong. That, in fact, the academic library has an essential role to play in keeping campus networks secure. To be very clear, no one would argue that network security is uniquely the library's job. Every campus has whole teams of people whose primary duties are to maintain and safeguard the institution's networks. But I'll argue that the library plays a significant role in keeping the network safe, and that underplaying that role, saying that security isn't our job, is both incorrect and dangerous. There was a time in the not too distant past when, in fact, it wouldn't have made much sense to argue that the library plays a vital role in keeping networks secure. This was a time prior to the blossoming and maturation of the internet, when the access patrons gained through libraries was mainly access to information encoded in physical documents that sat on shelves, and the library connected to campus networks only in its back offices through organizationally closed systems. In the 1990s, as the primary publishing platform for scholarly information access began migrating from the physical world to the internet, library services became much less about helping patrons find the right physical objects and much more about providing them a portal that took them out of the library and into a huge information universe populated not only by documents of various kinds, but also by software, behind which sit people of both good and bad faith doing both good and bad things. That portal is the campus network. And as with most portals, information flows through it in two directions. On both sides of the portal are people pushing information out and pulling information in. Both actions have consequences that vary depending on the type of information being exchanged and on the intentions of those exchanging it. When students and employees pass into the campus network for the purpose of getting access to library information and services, they start by pushing information through the network portal in a process we call authentication. They send data into the system that identifies them as authorized users, and in return are allowed to come through the portal into the campus system. Into the campus system can mean any number of things, including not only passage through that system and out onto the internet, but also entry into areas of the system itself that, depending on the user's role and permissions, may include financial data and management, human resources systems, email, courseware, and much more. Everyone who has access to campus networks has access to sensitive information to which bad actors seek access for purposes of profit. Even students who have little or no access to institutional files and systems have access to sensitive data about themselves that is stored on campus networks. And of course, they have permission to access expensive information resources for which the campus has paid a lot of money and access to which the campus has agreed to provide only to authorized users. By this point, I'm sure you're saying to yourself, this all sounds like an IT issue to me, and wondering what any of this has to do with the library. On most campuses, the library is the signatory to agreements with information providers that include an obligation on the library's part to make reasonable efforts to ensure that only authorized users access the information provided through the library's authentication system. These agreements alone, entered into willingly by the library and usually signed by a library administrator, are enough to demonstrate the wrong-headedness of insisting that campus network security is not the library's job. When licensing for online resources and services, the library itself affirmatively agrees that it will take on part of the duty of keeping campus networks secure by agreeing to do what it can to keep unauthorized users out. How does the library do this? In a number of ways. First, by educating students and employees about the importance of keeping their authentication credentials private. Phishing and other scams designed to trick users into sharing their credentials are nothing new, but in recent years they've targeted university students and employees in new ways, not only by trying to trick them into sharing their credentials unwittingly, but also in a much more open and full frontal way by trying to convince them that sharing their credentials will advance openness and free access to information by allowing third parties like LiveGen and Sci-Hub to harvest copyrighted content and make it freely available to all. For now, let's leave aside questions about the ethics of harvesting copyrighted documents and making them publicly available for unrestricted copying and distribution. That's not the issue we're debating today. What we're talking about is the library's role in safeguarding campus networks. And that issue is relevant to credential sharing because when you share your campus network credentials, your intention may be only to free licensed information from the tyranny of paywalls. But the effect of what you're doing is to give outside actors access to everything on the campus network that you yourself, with your credentials, are able to access. In any particular case, for example, sharing a network login may give the other person not only the ability to download a bunch of journal articles from Elsevier and then do whatever they want with them, but also access to the credential holder's email account, tax information, employees' annual evaluations and other personnel records, and much more. If the credential sharer is a teaching professor, he would likely be giving the other person access to his students' assignments and grades, with the ability to comment on the former and to change the latter. So one very important role that the library has in protecting network security is that of educating its patrons, students, faculty, and staff alike, about the importance not only of vigilance in the face of deceptive attempts to gain their credentials, but also of resistance when confronting explicit efforts to get them to share their credentials deliberately. Keeping their credentials private is not only a matter of honesty and ethical behavior, it's also a matter of protecting both their employer and themselves. But the library's role in educating users is relatively obvious. Less obvious, perhaps, is the library's role in maintaining secure networks itself. Just as a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, a campus network is only as secure as its least secure node. In other words, you can put as many locks as you want on the front door of your house, but if the back door is protected only by a doorknob lock from Walmart, that means your entire house has doorknob from Walmart level security. Let me briefly share an experience from my own institution that illustrates how the library's own network security, or lack thereof, can impact that of the whole campus. Earlier this past spring, a hacker successfully infiltrated a server at Brigham Young University and attempted to then hack the library's catalog server and gain access to sensitive patron data, of which we, like all universities, have quite a bit, though we're very careful about what we keep and how long we keep it. The server was taken offline and patched and immediately attacked again the moment it went back online. In the course of investigating and responding to this attack, campus IT determined that the library's ILS didn't meet minimum IT security requirements, and we are now required to block off-campus access to the catalog while we make the necessary changes, which unfortunately will take some time. This means that for some time now, I don't know how long, the library's systems, which themselves contain the personally identifying information of tens of thousands of students and employees, have been vulnerable to hackers to a degree of which we and campus IT were unaware. University networks are under constant attack, and the security of library networks is an essential element of keeping campus networks and the people who use them safe from online predation and institutional data theft. So, in summary, campus network security is the library's job. The library helps its patrons understand the importance of securing the credentials they use to gain online access to library services and resources, and also must ensure that its own nodes of the campus network are secure and not providing opportunities for bad actors.
Thank you very much. You're just in time. Let me just get rid of that. Wonderful. Thank you both very much indeed. Mark, can I invite you back up to the lectern for your 3-minute rebuttal to what Rick has just said?
Thank you very much. The argument that you made, Rick, that I think everybody should be listening to, because I think you have made a fantastic point. And it's not typical that somebody actually compliments the debater when they're trying to woo the crowd, but he did bring up a wonderful point. He talked about educating the campus community. And I do believe that the library does have an important role, but I would question whether that is about information security or if that's just basically about digital literacy in itself. Because I think we live in a world now where digital first is the way that information travels. It's also the way us as human beings exist for the most part. And so understanding the complexities of a digital environment and understanding your role as a player inside that environment, I think, is critical. But going to where you were talking about the ILS system, which I was sad to hear that there was a situation that you actually had to face at BYU, because you're not the only campus that's had to face that with their ILS. You know, that to me also just echoes the importance of a chief information security officer, the role that they have in reviewing these contracts. Having that role on a campus is paramount, because they will verify and vet every contract before paper meets pen or pen meets paper. And I think that that's critical. I don't believe that the library in itself is positioned well to take on the role of information security on a campus, the network information security. I just don't see its position in this space. I understand that we work inside of an environment where our network is exposed, but there has to be a firewall in between that. There's the actual firewall that you go out and you purchase and is managed by IT, but then also the army of IT professionals who are professionals in this space who know to guard the IT environment and to guard the campus from these malicious attacks. I don't envision the library being well equipped to take on that role. And I close by just mentioning one last thing. I do believe that the library is uniquely positioned to help inform the campus of the importance of information network security. I truly do. I think the library is a valuable agent in this space. But I don't believe that the library is responsible for providing network security to the campus. I believe there are professionals that do this, and it is their job to take care of this responsibility, and that is what they are employed to take care of. And I believe we have to allow them the ability to do the job that they are hired to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Rick, your 3-minute rebuttal to Mark's opening statement.
My worthy opponent might be surprised to know that I agree with the thrust of his argument, that when you outline all of the many roles and functions of campus network management, roles and functions that are currently carried out by squads of highly trained specialists, it's clear that the wholesale transfer of these roles and functions to the library would make no sense. But to say that network security is an important role of the library, that network security is, in fact, a responsibility of the library, isn't to call for the wholesale transfer of all network security responsibilities to the library. Crucial aspects of network security are already an important element of the library's responsibilities and have been ever since we began the shift from print to online 25 years ago. Mark argues that, quote, CISOs bear the onus of ensuring all campus contracts that interact with any segment of the campus network align with the institution's security policies and regulations, end quote. It may be the case that when it comes to campus contracts and regulatory compliance generally, the buck ultimately stops with the CISO. But I've negotiated and signed such contracts with online service providers at 3 research universities, and at none of them did the CISO expect those contracts to go up to him or her for review. The library was expected to take full operational responsibility for the terms, the implementation, and the management of those contracts, and to exercise significant oversight of the network access that they entail. Of course, ensuring that no unauthorized user gains access to any access point on the campus network is well beyond the remit and the capabilities of the library. But this doesn't mean that safeguarding the network isn't the library's job. It only means that it is the job of many on campus, including the library. The library participates by, for example, educating students and often, all too often, faculty about the vital importance of keeping their individual network credentials private and secure, by working actively with the campus IT office to identify and shut down IPs through which unauthorized use takes place, working with publishers to define the parameters of authorized use, etc. These are not just peripheral network security functions, they're essential ones, and they're fully in the wheelhouse of the library.
Thank you both very much indeed. I mean, a lot of food for thought there in both of your statements and both of your rebuttals. It is now the time that we can pass over to you in the audience. Please do come up to the mic with comments, with discussion points. In the interest of fairness, obviously, no questions only to one member of the panelists. We will be expecting comments responses from both. But if we could get people coming up, we want to hear. Oh, sorry. Going a bit funny. We very much want to hear your thoughts. Thank you. And if you could just say your name and where you're from.
Hello, I'm Athena Hepner. I'm from the University of Central Florida. I'm the Discovery Services Librarian, and in that role, I administer our Open Athens account. And I'm siding with the statement, or the counter to this statement. I do think that network security is a role for the library. And particularly now that we are using SAML, and it's passing attributes about our users to entities out in the network, in the World Wide Web. So I have to make sure that we're not revealing more than we need to. And we think of that in terms of privacy, but it's also security, because if I'm giving out our users' email addresses, that is personally identifiable information that then could be turned around to help bad actors do bad things with that information, either hacking our systems. And an unfortunate situation at UCF is the core email address is also the student's identifier. That identifier is then connected to their login, so they're getting one essential piece of the information they need to brute force the login for individuals. And it's, if we can prevent that from being distributed out as part of the SAML authentication, then we should. So thinking about these sorts of security issues is my role, and the role of others in the library as well, and one of the many roles that we have.
Thank you very much indeed.
I believe I would be the first one to respond to that. Yeah. Athena, thank you very much for the statement, and kudos on the role at UCF. Now, I'm not aware of the infrastructure at your university. I know it's a growing university, which, you know, up in the Northeast, we don't see a lot of growing universities anymore.
Nor in the West.
But I would ask this question: as you manage the Open Athens environment, do you do this on your own? Is there any support from the IT environment? Are there any colleagues that you connect with inside of IT operations?
We're not only growing, but we are the largest FTE, so other than University of Arizona. So, but they're a little different. We, of course, have an identity management team that I work with, and we have a security officer that I work with. So I am not taking this role on my own, but I am the primary administrator of our Open Athens system.
And you, as a librarian, are working directly with those folks.
Yes.
And as a librarian, if you run into any issues, are they your issues to solve, or do you pass those responsibilities to your IT personnel?
Both. It's usually a conversation, because they actually don't understand the library world very well. They don't actually understand Open Athens very well. They know identity management. They know how to figure out what URI ID to use for different attributes and all that. But where that is needed, when it's not needed, when to pass it, they don't really care about.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I won't mention to Michael Crow that you were bragging about your enrollment growth.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And we've got our next contributor.
My name is Chris Ferguson. I'm the Dean of Libraries at Murray State University. And I, for the past 3 years, have been doing double duty in that I was interim dean and director of collections and technical services. And I still, to this day, manage the library's proxy server. So when there's a proxy server problem, those come to me. I agree with both premises, in part because I think this is an issue of scale. So I think at a larger institution, perhaps where, and I might be over, I work at a mid-sized regional comprehensive university. We have 7,500 FTE. And campus network security is not the library's job. There are pieces of it that we touch, but ultimately security of user information is managed by that, and we are tying into systems, a CAS server, an Active Directory that are managed by campus IT. But I also see that in perhaps larger institutions where there is a greater degree of hands-on management or touching of users, that, you know, to cite Athena's example where she is managing their Open Athens authentication, I can see that. So I wonder if these are both true depending on the scale and size of your organization. So for me, I don't believe that campus network security is the library's job. There's pieces that we are responsible for, but overall I don't agree.
Thank you. Interesting premise. No response on that. Have we got any other comments? Thank you, sir.
I beat you. No, hey, I'm John Feltz from Coastal Carolina University. Hey, everybody. Great session so far.
Don't screw it up,
Yeah,
John.
don't say so far. Just like great session.
No pressure or anything, right? Just to piggyback on what Athena touched on earlier, and that is the role not only to be cognizant of network security, the role of librarians to do so in varying degrees by argument, but also be conversant in it and to truly be able to comprehend and articulate what an issue might be. So I can't tell you the number of times I've walked into an organization and they weren't able to speak astutely to any sort of network security issues or issues at writ large, really. And the role of the librarian within the academy really was diminished, especially within the eyes of IT, because they just didn't feel like, they felt like they were talking to another general user who didn't know that you're supposed to plug in a computer before you hit the power button, you know, for example. I think it is profoundly incumbent on the librarian to be able to speak, not to completely manage the whole network security infrastructure, but to be cognizant of it and how it all fits together and what is the role of a librarian in training and in communicating any sort of issues to the central IT department. Thank you for your time.
So John, it sounds like you're almost talking about a mirror image situation from what Athena was. Athena was talking about having a centralized IT office that doesn't really understand Open Athens. And you're talking about having librarians who have got some degree of network management as part of their work, but don't really understand everything that they ought to understand about the campus network, right? And it sounds like both of those are potentially problematic.
In its own right, yeah. I do think, though, that just the perception that campus IT has about librarians, if we aren't very savvy or knowledgeable about campus security overall, then we aren't seen as a serious player at the table, and our opinions aren't really valid, because we find many times in our professions that we need the help of IT, of campus IT, or anybody across campus. But if we're not treated as a serious player at the table, then the needs of the library are consistently diminished and made not a priority.
No, good point.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Anu Murthy. I'm the Electronic Resources Librarian at Georgia Tech Library. I have a comment. I agree with both of you because I manage, like Athena, I'm the administrator for the Open Athens in the current role, and we release only certain attributes that are allowed by the campus IT to the vendors. And if we find that some vendors do not agree to what attributes we do release, then we have to go to campus IT to explain what the vendor needs. So,
gosh, that sounds like a pretty important role to me.
I think so, but in my previous institution, campus IT rolled out a cybersecurity software called Zscaler, and they just rolled it out one day, and we got like 30 tickets from users who were on campus who couldn't access anything. And I was at a health sciences library. So they couldn't access anything at all. They couldn't access up-to-date, clinical key, nothing. And when we kept trying the IP route and VPN route, nothing worked at all. And finally we figured out, because I had to escalate it to the dean and the CIO, or whoever it's called, CTO. And then they realized that library actually buys resources for millions of dollars. And they said, okay, we can create an exemption list for up to date, because that's what our physicians use, and for the rest, they can do something else. but it doesn't work that way, right? The communication part of IT, campus IT, library staff who are not fully aware of the complex infrastructure that we handle in the back end and say we do magic so you can get to your PDF in like 1 second. And the campus IT doesn't understand any of it, right? So we're having to explain all these things, drawing maps, drawing pictures, and explaining things. Finally, we came up with all the resources, like 300 vendors, and we are giving them the list, and they're like, we can't do that. We cannot create an exemption list for 300 vendors. And then you have to narrow it down. It's just a lot of work. So I think, to both your point, communication is the key from the library to campus IT, and then having a voice in the table for us to be, not considered as not experts. We truly are not experts. We want to sit there, learn about what you guys do or the campus IT does, and then tell us what we want and what we do. And we do really do complex things, right? And we take really good care of the student data, and there's always campus breaches, to Rick's point, right? So that's a common thing. And if we hand it all over to the campus IT, they have these cybersecurity tools, but they still manage to breach all the data. But thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
So you know what we should have done at the beginning? We should have asked people to raise their hand and see if anybody worked in IT, because they're getting a couple of shots here. And I just want, on behalf of my IT brothers and sisters, some of them are doing the absolute best they can, and oftentimes struggling mightily to understand all their users, including the library.
I totally agree. And I also think that Anu brought up a really important point, which I had never really thought about before, but that is that I think that we in libraries, we tend to think that everybody understands, even at a relatively high level, what we do and how we get access to content. And I think the reality is the Vice President for Research understands very well how we gain access to content. The Chief Financial Officer understands very well. The Provost understands very well. The Chief Technology Officer may or may not. To the Chief Technology Officer, the library may just be one more node on the network. And the fact that we are, as you said, Anu, spending millions of dollars and negotiating terms of access with hundreds of vendors that define the who may and how they may get through the portal and out into the content, that's not a given. And that's no negative reflection on them. It's not their job to know exactly how the library accesses content, but it does point to the one other important role of the library in campus network security, which is not just to go with the IT folks and listen, but also to go to the IT folks and teach. And it's got to be a mutual education thing, I think.
Yeah. I know no more time left. Bob Boise from.
We've got 15 minutes. We've got
Okay, we still got some time.
All good.
So I'm Bob Boise from Springer Nature, and it is important what we think in this room today. But I think you'd have to say, if you're living and working on a campus, that what the highest level administrators on your campus think about this question is also very important, and perhaps decidedly important. Rick started to bring it up when he started to go up the ladder there. So my position is, what happens when there is something like an iOS security breach? Something happens clearly in the library's footprint. What does the upper level say? Did they say this is a network security breach and our network security staff is to blame and needs to get on this and fix it right now because it's their fault? Or do they say the library and their little, kind of ILS world and their thing, they didn't do their network security nearly well enough that they're supposed to be doing and they're responsible for? So my point is, if the administration says one thing, that's the answer to this question. If they say the other thing, that's the answer to this question. But what do they really say in the cases that we know about?
I mean, I can speak. I can speak to my case. Unfortunately, I can't speak hugely authoritatively because I'm not an IT guy. My understanding is that unfortunately, for trying to decide this question, in our case, kind of both things happened, right? We had an initial breach that came through the campus network writ large, and because they were able to get through an unsecured server on the campus network, they were then able to do what apparently they really wanted to do, which was get to the library catalog and the data that's held there. The campus was eventually, after multiple iterations and multiple attacks, able to shut down the particular portal through which the attacker had come, but in the course of resolving that issue, discovered that there was a second level security problem with the catalog server, and as a result, as I understand it, the library was directed to shut down the catalog to off-campus users. So it really, in our case, it was a combination of both one and two. There was a campus network lockdown and a directed by the campus library lockdown as well.
So just a quick follow-up, and then I'll let you ask your question. So this, to me, is the argument for the robust network security residing inside of an IT department. And here's the reason why I believe that. I don't believe any contract should be signed on campus, on any campus, without it going through a thorough review from a professional, a CISO, a CISO, that will review the contract, review the terms of the contract, and also review the security clauses inside that contract. It's vital because the network is under attack all the time. On my flight down here, I sat next to a gentleman coming in from Michigan, and his job is to sell network security to industry. He doesn't work in higher ed sector. And he said over the last 3 years during the pandemic, the amount of malware attacks that hit industry and hit institutions has just exasperated beyond belief. We do not know the actual numbers. And every day there's penetrations into our systems, and there has to be somebody who's ultimately responsible for that security. There just has to be somebody who's ultimately responsible for it on the campus. And then the last comment I'm going to make, next year's debate has to be whether provosts and VPRs truly understand how to access library content, because you went there, my friend, and I want to say, it was a moment I almost had a spit take. They're just like, go ahead.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Ferrante, and I'm Product Manager for Identity and Access Management with EBSCO. I work not on a university campus nor in a library right now, but I do work with lots and lots of libraries every day to configure, troubleshoot, optimize their authentication to a lot of different e-resources, not just our platform. And I often hear this very us versus them narrative that I'm sort of hearing reflected in a lot of the questions and comments today of who is responsible? Is it campus IT and the CISO, or is it the library? And that is a problem that many librarians and library workers run into, is a lack of clearly aligned priorities and goals with their IT or their information security organization. I get the sense sometimes that most IT teams don't realize that based on the size of the library or the institution, the library could be setting up authentication to anywhere from 35 to 1,000 different e-resource publishers and platforms. We also know that a lot of vendors, like EBSCO, but also smaller publishers more and more, are trying to move towards SAML-based authentication, which allows for the release of personally identifiable data and roles data. So knowing that the library has that volume of connections for authentication and going into the future will be having opportunities to release more and more data, it seems like there needs to be some sort of push toward agreeing that this is a shared responsibility model, because the volume and the scale is just not something that IT is aware of at this point in time. So I have a question for you both. I am wondering what you think. Is there an opportunity here for a new sort of recommended hybrid role that exists with one foot in the library and the research part of an organization and one foot in the security and IT team? Because it does not, from what I'm hearing today, it does not seem like the right communication often happens to make sure that you agree on what the problems are and what the solution needs to be.
Good question.
It is a good
Mark?
question. Well, I mean, I would say that in order to successfully manage that communication between IT and your library, you could approach ITHAKA SNR, and we'd be happy to work with you as you.
Well done.
No, you like that? Yeah. No, I think you bring up a valid point, and seriously, the tension between libraries and IT, you know, that's a long argument and a long tale of a struggle that has been real for a number of years. I think with the security issues that we are facing on our campuses right now, I believe communication is certainly paramount. But I keep going back to one point. I believe there has to be one office that is ultimately responsible, because no decisions or no good decisions are ever made by committee. Go ahead.
I would just add that I agree that I think that issues of library institution alignment have been top of mind for me for years. It's something that I think and worry about a lot, and that definitely applies in the context of the library's interactions with IT. There's always, with central IT, there's always going to be a certain amount of tension arising from the fact that central IT's primary concern is keeping things safe and locked down, as it should be, and the library's primary concern is getting people access. Those two goals are always going to be in tension. That doesn't mean that you can't find the right balance and achieve both of them in the right ways. It just means that there's always going to be a struggle. And part of what we need to do in the library is make sure that that tension doesn't overpower our ability and our willingness to work constructively with IT to ensure that even as we are working to make access as seamless and friction-free as possible, that we are not pushing them or ourselves behind the scenes doing that in a way that creates genuine risks for the institution and its students and employees. And you know, there are so many tensions like that that we're trying to manage all the time, and that's definitely one of them.
Agreed.
Wonderful, thank you both. Oh, is Matthew coming up? I think we might, no, I think we might, we probably do have one for one final comment, because then I do want to make sure, obviously, we need to go to the vote.
Oh, right. Okay, I'm going to make this really quick. I guess more of a comment, really. So my name is Matthew Rigucci. I'm the director of product marketing over at Wiley, but I was a librarian, e-resources management librarian for about 10 years before I defected, and can speak very much to the interesting dynamic that exists between libraries and IT. And you raise a good point, Mark, which is, you know, you need to communicate. And what you were saying, Rick, too, is that, you know, folks just don't know. So I would probably argue that education is a big piece of this on both sides, regardless of how you feel, whether it's IT or libraries or not. And I was wondering if there are any resources or any organizations that have put any resources out there that you might be willing to recommend for further reading.
No, but that's that does require, I think, some significant research, because I know there has been research done maybe a decade or so ago on IT library relationships, but I don't know if there's ever been actual research, and just because I have never engaged with it, on campus network security or any type of network security for that matter, and any user group that's library or non-library related. I think that's an interesting organizational culture research project that's just dying to happen. And Wiley could approach ITHAKA SNR, and we'd be more than happy to work with you. And
Wonderful. Thank you all. I know. I think we need to go to the vote, unfortunately.
I will just make one final comment. The campus IT can always manage to get positions filled, but library can never do that. In my previous health science institution, the campus IT got 4 staff, while the library had to do everything with the existing staff. Thank you so much. And we have 5 more minutes left.
Thank you very, very much, and thank you all for those comments and contributions. It's been brilliant. So we are going to go to our vote again. And actually, Rick did remind me that I should have said at the beginning that if you didn't vote at the start, you can't vote now. So it's and if you did vote, please vote. We have lost a couple of people, I think, to other things and timing. So it probably isn't going to be hugely scientific, but with those provisos in place, can I ask again for a show of hands for those who are in favour of the motion, so those who believe that campus network security is not the library's job? Can I have a show of hands? And Anu, could you help me count? How many? 9? And those who disagree with the proposition, so therefore those who believe that it is the library's job, could I have a show of hands? 12. 12. On the basis of those votes, Rick Anderson, you have won the debate.
I call fake news.
Could I just make a little shameless plug for people who are around this afternoon? SNSI has a poster session. For those of you who are interested in this topic, SNSI conducted 2 pieces of research, one with librarians and one with CISOs, to look at their views and attitudes towards cybercrime, cybersecurity, whose role and job they think it is to protect networks. We're in the poster session 1 that is taking place at 3:20. So if you do want to come and talk to us and hear about the results of that research, we'd love to see you. Thank you very much indeed.